Well, I suppose I sort of am a bit of a journeyman. I think I always wanted to go into teaching. I had a big love of history when I was a small boy and studied at university. And then when I finished university, I got some office work. But I think I always really wanted to teach, so I decided to go travelling, and I came to Russia. And eventually I ended up at StudyLab. I started off teaching the very youngest kids in reception and really enjoyed it. And I've been here ever since, and over the years I've sort of worked my way up and designed lots of different courses. I've taught a lot of different classes over the years. And I still really enjoy it. I enjoy the creativity that we have at StudyLab. I think that a lot of people forget that growing up is all about experiences. Children need to interact with each other, and really for teachers it's about inspiring, getting kids to understand that they're part of a large world, and being able to appreciate that. And especially when you're looking at a language school, it's giving them the fluency, really to be able to express themselves, whether that's through something as simple as just making a poster about a current event or something that they really care about, or maybe a short poem or piece of writing, all the way up to researching for a presentation or debating a topic that they really care about. I think that the biggest thing, kids need to find their passion, because once you find your passion, you can follow that into adulthood. When I look at a new teacher, I'm really looking for some sort of spark, something that's very difficult to explain or put a name to it, but it's being able to respond to situations, because some of the best teachers are the ones who know their groups perfectly. They can see that maybe a student has not really quite understood something, or something that they really love, and then they adapt to it. We don't want teachers who just open a book and follow a book. We want to look for those teachers who can say, I had this perfect lesson and this is where I adapted this to suit the needs of my class. Whenever I'm looking at new teachers, I'm looking for examples of that. I'm looking for them to demonstrate a really good idea, something that I've not thought of before, to show that they're always trying to think up new ways to teach children. Russian is always a problem for children when they're in school, because it's tempting, and we really understand that kids, if they are struggling, will go back to their native language, and it is always an ongoing process to give them that language if they don't know a word or if they need something, and really instilling that habit of asking for things in English to try and keep those Russian levels low. Because for pretty much all the teachers here, we've learnt Russian or a foreign language, and we know how tempting it is to just go back to your own native language. So we understand the process, and we try our best to fix it and give them the tools they need to help. If you're a parent, you know your kids better than most teachers will know them. So often parents know what their kids like, and they know what sort of personality their child is. If they're maybe someone who's quite quiet and needs help to express themselves, or they're an incredibly confident child. And generally you can look at that sort of child and find a school which feels right for them, that has that nurturing environment if they're a very quiet child, or has a very active, lively environment if their child is more boisterous or more confident. When you're looking at a school, you're wanting to look at what subjects they're trying to introduce. If they're just doing one or two main everyday subjects and really focused on one area, I think that can be too narrow for children. I think children need a variety of subjects. You should always really look at your fridge, because I remember when I was a kid, we'd always be taking things home and sticking them on our fridge. And there are some things in my fridge back in London that I did 20 years ago, and it's still hanging there. So I think when you're looking at a school, you should really be looking at your fridge to see what things your children are taking home and what events or activities they're talking about when they get home. That's generally the best indicator of how much your kid is enjoying school and whether that school suits their personality. Any new child will be interviewed, and usually I'm the one who will interview them, because really when you're looking at a British school programme, it's very much a balancing act. We know that Russian kids are generally very good at maths, but they often don't have the vocabulary for English maths. Just the basic vocabulary of 5 plus 5 equals 10. Equally, under a British curriculum, we start science at a much earlier age. So I want to check if a student has that maths and science vocabulary to really fit into that year group. I'll also be asking lots of questions in English to look at their more general level of English, but it's a case of having a good level of English as well as subject-specific vocabulary. If you've come to British school for a number of years, you have a wide vocabulary in maths and in science and in history and in geography and art, not just in English. And I think that sometimes a student can have a very strong level of English but not be able to name the parts of a plant that we would cover in year one. So we always interview students just to see where their level is so that we can get that balance right. Sometimes a student has a very good level but low subject-specific vocabulary, and we need to decide maybe they should go a year lower just to catch up with that language, or we feel that they can do that as they study. Really, we are just trying to get that balance right, but it's never set in stone. We like to see how they progress and whether they've developed rapidly throughout the year, and maybe they should probably try to push up to another level, or if they're finding it a little bit too difficult, maybe we need to just slow things down for them. So we're always trying to monitor progress. We try to blend an international school environment with the English national curriculum. So we will look at the topics that you would cover in a normal English school. And naturally, we only have students for a couple of hours a week. We can't cover the 5 days a week that a child would have in a British school. So we try to take the best topics, the ones we think are the most inspiring, the most interesting, and also the most useful. And so we try and take those topics and we try to then fit that into a system where there's a level of overlap and they can complement each other. So for example, we have our foundation subject, which for most students covers history, geography and art. And really a lot of art complements maths. There are a lot of colours and shapes and designs, repeating patterns that you would be learning in maths. Equally, geography very much supports science, water cycles and rivers. These are the sorts of things you learn in maths but also in geography. And history really does support English, but in a different way. In history, you're more likely to be looking at more perspectives and presentations and analysing, whereas in more everyday English, you don't have that as much. So we try to pick subjects that really focus on the different skills that you need to progress. If you look at your everyday school, there's a lot of focus on memorising, on textbooks, and being able to just repeat a lot of information. But here we try to make a creative environment. But it's not just all about creativity, it's being able to bring an end product to that, being able to use language and being able to use it in different subjects. It's not just a case of that you'll be sitting here and memorising different verb forms. We're going to want you to be looking at the topics that you really enjoy and then taking that to a next level, a next step in a foreign language, which is something you wouldn't really be doing during the week, because a typical English lesson in a normal English school would say, okay, I want you to make a postcard. Well, okay, well, that's quite nice, but why don't we make a postcard from someone who lived 400 years ago while the whole of London was burning down. That's far more interesting. And it's far more creative because you're having to give a different perspective, a perspective that you maybe haven't thought about before. And I would say that coming to a school like this is all about different perspectives, creativity, creating things, taking part in projects. I feel that this is something that isn't really covered a lot in your normal schools, your normal Monday to Friday school. I always hear a lot of parents who say, I go to a foreign country, I go to England and I go to America, and my kids don't speak any English. But then I ask them, do you speak English with them at home? No. Do you ever speak English with your with your children? No. Well, then why would they speak English? If you don't set up those habits at home and go through work together so that your kids can see that you've studied these subjects before and you have a lot of knowledge, then they often don't really mix that learning environment, and it basically becomes that home is for relaxation and school is for studying. So I think that learning is a big process, and it's a process that you are really doing all the time. Whether that's just sitting at home watching something on Netflix in Russian, you're learning advanced words in Russian. Well, why not apply that to other subjects? Maybe instead of watching it in Russian, maybe watch it in English, or maybe watch it in Russian with English subtitles. Why not take that learning process and apply it to different environments? Because maybe you might discover that that style helps your learning. Some children aren't very good at reading and memorizing, but the minute you turn on a TV program or a song and it's in English and you memorize it immediately, then suddenly you've worked out that actually you're an audio learner. So I think that my advice to all parents is to remember that learning is a process and apply it to as many different situations, because you never know when one of those situations might create a eureka moment.